to honor and celebrate the life of Charles Smith, or Charlie, or Chuck. I think he even tried going by Chaz for a period of time. By whatever iteration of his name you knew him, I'm sure you also knew him to be authentic, to march to the beat of his own drum, and to ponder deeply the mysteries of life. His beliefs, be they long held or recently discovered, he held with conviction. He loved his family, his garden and trees, and he loved to help those in need. We each come here today with our own recollections and associations, but we all loved and we all miss him. For myself, I know that every time I see an old truck, a railroad track, I hear the sound of a chainsaw, or countless other things, I'll be reminded of the memories and lessons that he gave me. He left a great legacy behind in his children and grandchildren. Although at a glance he was the picture of self-assurance, he would sometimes express his insecurity, wondering if he'd been a good father. I would always let him know that he had. I hope that he can see us now to dispel any further doubt. I love you, Dad, and I miss you. And now I believe we'll have the lighting of the chalice.
Thank you, Joel. Way to get the tears flowing. I broke the seal. So this is the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville, and we have a tradition of lighting and extinguishing the chalice. So in between the lighting and the extinguishing is our sacred time of services and gatherings together. And so the words are in your order of service if you'd like to say them with me. This is what we do every Sunday and for all our gatherings. And Kata, you can light the chalice. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in truth, and to help one another. Thus do we covenant together. And now we're going to sing Amazing Grace. Lovely, lovely. Okay, so now Bree is going to come up and give us Dad's eulogy. I can't wait to hear this.
Hey everyone. Olo, as Joel said. We've all been told off a time or two for not saying Olo, so we better all say it today, if no other time. Thank you so much for tuning in to the live stream, or for those of us that were able to be here. I'm glad that you're here. I don't know if I am more comforted or creeped out that Joel's opening was pretty much exactly what the points of my eulogy are going to be. But if nothing else, it says something about the consistency and the legacy that Dad has left. We are here today to honor the life of Charles Philip Smith. As Joel said, known to many as Chuck or Charlie, as Chaz, or as Dad, as I'll be using in this eulogy. My dad was born August 28th, 1949 in Illinois, and he passed away here in Fayetteville on October 5th, 2022, following the complications of a massive stroke. The common metaphors when talking about an individual's life is usually in terms of something like the story of someone's life or a journey of a life. But actually, I think it's most accurate to describe my dad's timeline as the creation of an abstract painting. Full of lines and colors that are bright, then dark, contrasting, open to interpretation, and absolutely going to leave a lasting impression. As I read out some details of my dad's life, I invite you all to consider how the painting of your own life, what other colors that are in there, have intersected with that of my dad, and how, for the good, the bad, and the ugly, he has done nothing if not leave a lasting impression. My dad was always really good at making things seem magical. All his retellings of his adolescent years made the absolute best bedtime stories. There was always this line of independence and adventure that showed up even as a little boy. When he was young, this looked like zipping around town with friends on their bikes, sneaking onto the golf course, diving into the ponds to retrieve golf balls that they would then sell back to the golfers. As a teenager, this was illustrated really well when he told me about taking the Volkswagen Beetle, which, if I'm not wrong, actually belonged to one of his brothers, and drove it all the way from Illinois to California, only to have it break down for the final time on the West Coast, leaving him to hitchhike all the way back home. And to hear him tell it, there was never any regret with this decision. He was just super excited about getting to meet new people and experience new things. After he graduated high school, Dad was drafted into the Army, and he was stationed on a base in Germany, where his line of independence and need for adventure meant that he made his own fun. A few years later, after he was thankfully honorably discharged, he met and married our mom, Marla. Together, they had all 6 of us kids. And right in the middle of having all those kids, they also moved from Illinois to the wilds of Northeast Arkansas. Dad's ultimate dream was to have a place in the country where he and Mom could raise a family, have animals and a garden that could be self-sustaining, and where he could gather other like-minded people around him. Dad headed up the building project of the homestead. And here I just want to pause because, as I was writing this eulogy, I realized how well this highlights some of the best qualities of Dad. He was just this guy from Illinois who bought up land and proceeded to find a way to build a farm in the middle of nowhere that included a really well-built house that was 5 bedrooms, who knows how many outbuildings, animal pens, chicken coops, a low-water bridge, a mile-long driveway, a garden plot, a super precarious yet somehow stable treehouse, and a menagerie of domesticated and wild animals alike, which sometimes included his kids too, pretty free range. Throughout this period, Dad also continued to hone in on his craft as an arborist. He was definitely a true tree man. He started working on trees as a teenager, and he climbed his last tree just 2 months before he was admitted into the ICU. Dad was always dreaming up new dreams. When Mom and Dad divorced in 2001 and the farm on the 40 acres was no longer in the works, he started pouring a lot of his energy into another piece of land that he had in Hidden Valley, a patch of woods running along an idyllic creek. Again, I say that this truly represents Dad's optimism, creativity, sheer force of will, and terrifying knowledge of physics when he somehow turned a truck bed camper and a pop-up camper into a 2-story house with full plumbing, electricity, a wood stove that heated the whole house, and not to mention multiple workshops that continued to expand on the property. This kingdom became rightfully known as the Hobo Castle, or the HC. We all know that Dad loved to abbreviate. One of Dad's favorite things was having his family or friends come over to the Hobo Castle, where he would whip you up some coffee in his French press, throw potatoes, sausage, and eggs in the skillet for a breakfast hash, while he sang some old song in his signature baritone. And then, of course, he'd bring out his metal box of index cards to tell you about his latest discoveries in numerology and his philosophy of love light that I can see from all of your eyes you've heard something about over the last few decades. This was something that Dad was super passionate about, the idea that all people could exist in unity and harmony. Every person would have work to do that would contribute to those around them. This was also something that I think that Dad was super frustrated in life, though I'm sure that he would feel incredibly happy to see everyone here today united in a spirit of community and love. This is an incomplete picture, and I'm totally aware of this. I'm thankful that in a few minutes we get to open up the floor for others to fill in the gaps. But I did want to list some of the things that for me are irrevocably linked with my dad. Some of the ways that he has changed the shapes and lines within my own painting. Maybe you already have a list of your own, but if you haven't created one yet, I invite you to start thinking or even writing out your own list as I speak. So then, as I wrap up, here are a few things that in my life have been painted with the vibrant colors of Charlie Smith. Number one is whistling. Not only did Dad have great whistling skills that I was really happy to inherit and very excited to be able to foster as I grew up, but he also had his distinctive whistle that he used to call to his children with. And I always remember being in Walmart as a little kid, and you would hear that particular whistle, and you just knew that he was about to come around the corner. You'd just be on the lookout because you knew he was about to be there. Yeah. Number two is outdoor thermometers. In the last couple of years, this was the main way that my dad interacted with our group chats. We were always kept abreast of all the temperature changes happening in his house at Hidden Valley. And honestly, we joked about it at the time, but joke's on us ultimately, because I can't look at a thermometer now without thinking about Dad. Number three, as Joel said, basically anything with cars or trains. He was so good at keeping things magical, whether it was throwing pennies on the track and then looking for them later on, or, with particular views about how you treat the engine of your car. I have the insatiable need to turn my AC off anytime that I'm going up any amount of hill. I haven't quite gotten to the thing of shifting in weird places because I really don't understand it. But Dad did end up teaching me stick, which I don't think that he had a great time doing, because he would always tell me to feather the clutch, and I had no idea what it meant to feather the clutch. But Dad, I will say that I do understand it, so all of your efforts for that day were not in vain. Number four is road trips. He was particularly intense about his road trips in that we didn't often stay in hotels or go with any kind of structured plan in place. But he did ensure that I had great experiences in a whole lot of different places around the country that I would not have otherwise. Number 5 is bicycles. Of course, I can't talk about Charlie Smith without talking about bikes. For my own personal self, I am super thankful that I grew up not being able to remember a time when I couldn't ride a bike because he set me on one when I was really small and just let me go. And number 6, the last one, and the thing that I brag about the most often, because of my dad, I know how to spell and sing the entirety of the Happy Birthday song. As I was thinking through all these things, I was reflecting on how small a piece all my memories are when considering the expansive painting that was Charlie Smith. My dad wasn't a perfect man. I think we all have plenty of stories about adventures and misadventures with Charlie Smith. But I also think that we all have plenty of stories about a man who had a zest for life, who was independent, fierce in his beliefs, intelligent, imaginative, inventive, silly, spontaneous, deep thinking, childlike, and generous. Thank you.
Bree, that was just as amazing and more as I thought it would be. And now we're gonna sing our second hymn, Love Lifted Me. And part of these I need to explain about the hymns is honoring Dad and his time as a Christian. When he would lead songs at our churches, like as we were growing up. So and these were a couple of his favorites.
I'm gonna need a little help with wagon.
Oh, this is
Oh, excuse me. Good.
Can we rise in body or spirit as we are able?
I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more. But the Master of the sea heard my despairing cry, from the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me.
Verse 3.
Storms and danger rock above, Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. But the Master of the sea billows His will away. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me.
All right, good times. Celebrating Charlie Smith. This is a strange balance, celebration of life, memorial agreement. But we try to have fun because that's what he'd want us to do. Have fun and focus on him, and we've checked all the boxes. So, speaking of fun, we are now going to have a time that is open for anybody to share stories of Dad. Try to keep it a little bit brief so we're not here till like midnight. And I suppose I could start. Hang on. I got it. Okay, so that's a little piece I call Flashlight Santa. And as soon as Dad passed away, that's the picture I had in my head to paint. You know, that was back in October, so it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. And Dad, another one of those things that kind of started as a joke. I don't know when this started, but he like would give out flashlights to everybody every single Christmas. And, you know, at first it was kind of like, flashlights again, and we'd laugh about it. Let me guess, flashlights, you know. But into adulthood, I swear, no present was handier throughout the year. And I'm like, that was freaking genius, because he has us thinking about him the whole year, you know, especially when I moved out to Ann's beautiful farm. I use flashlights every single night. And a lot of people would just use their phone, but, you know, we like the classics. There are so many things, like trying to think of how to even start telling stories about your parent who you've never known life without is crazy. But some of the things that popped into my head, of course, the flashlights, and then riding with him on his motorcycle when I was like 3, going everywhere, and I would sit in front of him on the fuel tank and have my blanket, you know, my blankie, and he would know I fell asleep. Like I felt so safe. I would fall asleep and my blankie would go flying, and he'd be like, "You fell asleep, didn't you?" But I'd just go with him everywhere. And, you know, I was Dad's little buddy for a while. Some would say I was his first son. I helped him out in the shop, you know, learned all the tools. Just nighttime, we got the stove in the shop roaring, but you got that, like, you know, camping, super cold, super hot feeling. Yeah, just, those were good times, and very adventurous times with Dad all the time. Shoot, Callie, can you bring me that? I wanted to read a poem. Nope. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. Thank you. This poem reminds me a lot of Dad. A lot of Mary Oliver poems are perfect for him, but, you know, what are they not perfect for? So this one's called Moments. There are moments that cry out to be fulfilled, like telling someone you love them, or giving your money away, all of it. Your heart is beating, isn't it? You're not in chains, are you? There's nothing more pathetic than caution when headlong might save a life, even possibly your own. And I want to open it up to, I'm sorry, I got to share this from Sheila. Sheila Fletcher, hopefully she's tuned in on Zoom. You guys remember Sheila, everybody, yeah? Okay, many years with Dad after Mom and Dad divorced, so Sheila's amazing. She sent this because she couldn't be here because she's taking care of her very elderly mother. I found out some things I didn't know. Oh, this first part's so classic, it cracks me up. When I was living in Cherokee Village, I met Charlie through an ad he had put in the Villager Journal newspaper in the month of May 2006. In his ad, he was asking for a project girl to, I know. It's so dad. To help with a local landscaping and tree service named Chuck and Saw. I was finishing the school year, getting ready to start the summer break, so I thought, why not? Get some sun, make a little money. Project girl, what the heck? So I called. We met at Carol's Lakeview restaurant. The rest is history, as they say. We became close friends, sharing the next years together. Looking back, I don't know why I answered his ad. Oh, but I'm forever grateful that I did. I knew him as Chuck at first, then later as Charlie. His love of bike riding was contagious, and I still have the Schwinn bicycle he gave me. We rode bike trails together everywhere. In Arkansas, we rode in Cherokee Village, Jonesboro, Fayetteville, and Little Rock. He gave me a great gift of enjoying life. He gladly and generously shared with me loving and special times with his 6 wonderful children. I added that part. No, I'm just kidding. I had shared with him that I could not have children. So in his loving way, he would always give me a card on Mother's Day, making me cry every time. Woo! Charlie was there for me at a difficult time in my life, losing my husband 2 years before. I made it, dang it. I made it through because of his friendship. He was there for me when my dad passed away, going with me to the facility that my dad was in and offering comfort. One of the many things I love and remember about Charlie, these stand out. When he started reading a good book, he would read it without stopping till it was finished. He loved a good breakfast, especially blueberry pancakes. He loved and was very proud of his children and grandchildren, talking about them all the time. For several years, he planted a garden next to his home. I remember digging for potatoes for the first time in my life, felt like digging for gold. When he grew corn, we had a full corn boil. His Toyota car was the most amazing car I've ever seen. He pulled, it seemed like tons of tree limbs and more on a rack hooked up behind a car that had over 300,000 miles. And last she knew it was still running, but it's not anymore. When we had the ice storm and lost electricity for weeks in Cherokee Village and the surrounding area, he was the one that saved us with his wood-burning stove and generator. We emptied out freezers and cooked a lot of food for many people during that time. I remember that was one of his happiest times. He was an excellent arborist. I was amazed at his skill climbing trees and shaping them. It looked natural for him. I always thought of him as an artist when he was up in the trees. Charlie was one of a kind in his thinking, always outside the box. He enjoyed numerology, always working on numbers, which honestly amazed me at times how accurate it was. When I moved to St. Louis with my mom, he and I would continue talking on the phone, sometimes for hours. I will miss those talks. Most of all, I will think of Charlie on my birthday. It's actually, she and I share a birthday. I will miss hearing him sing his own version of the birthday song, which has been mentioned. He was a unique soul that I feel blessed to have known. I will miss him, Sheila. Next.
Okay. So when I think of Dad and remember all the good times that we had, I just really feel like my life kind of started when we moved out to the country. Like I was going into first grade, and it was just so much fun to go out there and check on the land and see things as, you know, as the house was being built. And I don't know, like we're talking about things seeming magical, and I guess Dad really did like impart magic into the world. So anyway, this is probably not going to go well.
So I just, like, I think about mom and dad wanting, to live out in the country, and then they just did it. And that's just, I don't know, I feel like, you can probably not gonna be able to do this. Like, if you want something, like, they just decided to do it. And that's pretty much how our whole, like, how our lives were, like, things, they just made it happen. So anyway, yes, so it just really was such a fun place to grow up, and just, I don't know, like, it was hard being out in the country, but as a kid, like, it was just so much fun, like, so magical. So, I mean, mom and dad had to work really hard, and I think as a kid, that was like the best of all, like going camping as a kid, living in the country as a kid, like, we just got the best of it, so. And it was just so beautiful. I don't know, it really was magical, so. And I just think about all of the animals that we had and how much fun that was, like having the goats, just trimming everything on the goat pasture, like to a perfect height so you could play back there, and drinking goat milk for I don't even know how many years. Like, I was telling someone, I was like, oh yeah, mom sent that in my lunch box. So I had goat milk at school, like lukewarm goat milk. It's like, that was not, but we got used to it. We really loved it. I mean, I'm sure that was very good for us. Yeah, I remember mom, like, working on it, and we always had that for years. So, I mean, I really was like in the time of dad's life where he was like very, I guess, fundamentalist, and just, like, it was a long stage for like Darcy and I and Fawn, kind of in the transition time maybe. So, yeah, and I mean, I just remember mom was always working, but like really happy, and she just worked so hard. Dad worked so hard. Thinking about him going out to work so far away in town and coming back in. I mean, it was really like, we loved Laura Ingalls and we read all the books. Like, it really was like that to me. Like, it was that idyllic. We never went to see Laura Ingalls in Missouri until I was an adult, but it did have that feeling to it, of that time. Like, we just felt like pioneers kind of out there. So, yeah. So I was thinking about just chores, and I mean, dad did make us work pretty hard. I know we had a lot of free time, but like, I remembered scooping out the chicken coop. Like, I was thinking of like the worst chores. I'm sure we didn't, we didn't work nearly as hard, but scooping out all the old stuff to put new stuff into the chicken coop was one of our big jobs. The one that we probably hated the most was weeding the garden, I think. Like, that was really a dreaded chore. We would wait till it was too hot, and then we would decide, okay, fine, we'll go weed the garden. And we would have like the sweat bees flying around, which we don't have those in Texas, but you would be, weeding and doing a terrible job, pulling out the weeds, and, so upset. And then one would get into like the crevice of your arm, and you'd be like crying about it. So, like, we just felt like we worked so hard, but I'm sure we did a terrible job. And then we just were like, okay, we're good. So then I remember one day we were weeding, and then we went down to the creek, and Dad was still working at the garden, and there was a giant water moccasin in the crevice of the rock between the two rocks. And we were screaming for Dad to come, and he heard us, and it was close. I mean, it was pretty close over to the swimming hole where we were. He came over with an axe or like a garden hoe, probably a garden hoe, and chopped its head off. And, I mean, it was a poisonous snake. And then it just stayed on the rocks, and there was the whole skeleton. So some cool science, right? Yes. That was a different time. So we were just really happy that Dad was there to save the day, since we were always on the lookout for poisonous snakes. So. And I was thinking of Dad liked us to help with the firewood. We had a giant woodshed, of course, since Dad had so much wood that he brought home. And he was like, you have to stack it straight. And we would start stacking it, and it would get off. And so it would just start leaning forward. And I remember he was like, you have to start over. And we were like, what? We've been working so hard. And we had to take everything down and start over, because that's probably a good lesson for not getting off track in life, right? Like, once you get a little off track and you keep going, you've got to start over. So, So yes, and Dad, I was always thankful to him for, there weren't a whole lot of jobs where we grew up in rural Arkansas, but our lawn mowing business, like he put the ad in the paper, we had all of our equipment, and we had our Subaru 4-wheel drive hatchback and our lawnmower. We pulled the riding lawnmower behind our car, and I did that from like age 14 when Darcy was driving, and I'm sure I was driving too, until Vaughn and I did it together for quite a while. So that was just a very nice thing because I was still able to do this summer program that I was in and still have a job. Like it was just a blessing. So that was very nice of him to do that for us. And a lot of the people that called were like, they thought we would be men, and they were like, the sweet old ladies are like, well, okay, I thought you were gonna be, men, because it just said D&T lawn mowing service. but we just proved ourselves to them. Yes, it was fun. And I don't know, I think about Dad just loved simple things, I mean, he was a very complex person and he wrestled with a lot of things, but he and Mom both were very good at teaching us to notice things and enjoy life. So I'm very thankful for that. And I mean, I'm thinking about, we definitely saw like his highs and lows, and that affected our family. We kind of joke about it, but it was, some of it was hard. Like he would want to start a commune, and we're like, no, we don't want to do that. And he really wanted us to move into this school bus that was like parked next to the shed and like connected to it. And it's not like the beautiful school buses that you see now that have been transformed. It would have been, I was just picturing us wearing like peasant clothes in a school bus. And like, it's not gonna happen. By then we were teenagers, we're like, that is not gonna happen. So we did have, he definitely, escalated things and would think about things for a long time, and then he would just move on to something else, So I was just thinking about some of the things that Dad loved that he passed on to me. Like Mom would not have passed on an over easy egg on a toast, but I love eggs because of that. Mushrooms sauteed in butter, he would be cooking those up. I'm like, oh, it's the best. Just his Fannie Mae candies that he loved, and coffee, just how much, enjoyment he got out of a good cup of coffee. Mincemeat pies and real maple syrup is the only way to go. And for Christmas, Mom would get him the little maple candies, and he would be so excited and share them with us. So, yeah, and he could really eat a lot of cookies. I was like jealous. He'd get like a stack. I'm like, why does Dad get so many cookies? No, you couldn't really justify it, but. And just like Christmas time, Bing Crosby Christmas, like swing music, that was so much fun listening to those records. Yes, so I tried to pass on It's a Wonderful Life to the girls because that was one of Dad's favorite, probably the favorite Christmas movie, but they're like, no, this is sad. We don't like it. I'm like, but it's sad in a good way. And just like how much he loved trains and all the times we would go. And so, yeah, driving up here, I saw 3 trains, and I just thought, wow, this is just gonna remind me of Dad always. So it's really nice. And traveling, like, even though we didn't have money, we still went places. Like we went so many places. And I just always have thought like, well, if you really want to go somewhere, you can just go, like it'll work out. I haven't tried that yet, but seems true because it always worked out for us. And his silly songs and the funny nicknames he had for all of us. Oh my goodness. Mine was Terran meristematic tissue because of some plant thing. So I liked it that later on he got back into gardening again because we had huge gardens. We did have one right by the creek, and it had some fruit trees that didn't work out, but that one had to be moved because of flooding. So then we had our bigger garden. And so later on, I was glad that he was able to garden again. And so like the last time we saw him, we went to his house this summer, and he had his garden, and he was so excited about it and showed us around. Then we went swimming at a spring, which was very Dad fun. And he just always just loved to see everybody when we would visit. So, I mean, things weren't simple in our relationship, but I was thinking about just knowing that he loved us all so much. So, yeah, so And one of my memories, well, this is taking too long. I'll try to be quick. He put money around a tree when we were in Florida on vacation, and we found it the next day, and we thought it was like a magic tree. So the day after he passed, I was walking home after dropping Marla off, and there was like money all around on the sidewalk. So anyway, and I've been finding money in my shoes. So unless Aaron's putting it in there, I'm thinking that's gonna be his thing that he does, you know. Anyway, I just think that we have so many better things ahead of us than what we leave behind. So, thank you.
You had to watch out when you'd hear, "Come on, it'll be fun." So trains, real quickly, I got two quick stories to tell you, and this was at Taryn's wedding. We went down to, was it Hardy or Williford afterwards. We went to a soda fountain with Darcy's friend Rebecca, remember that? And we had a great time. We went to the soda fountain. We had a really nice soda, and Willard and I brought the kids. Joel, were you there? We brought one of your kids though. And so after we had ice cream, there was a train idling on the tracks. So come on, it'll be fun. So we climb up on the train, and this is kind of neat. We thought it was neat to be on this running train. And then he got inside of it. And he started trying to figure out how to drive this thing. Oh, and he honked the horn. Or did he? Did he honk the horn? Yeah, he honked the horn. And Willard and I said, "Let's get the heck out of here." And we grabbed our kids and ran as far as we could. Come on. Yeah, before the cops arrived, and we were all thrown in prison. So come on, it'll be fun. But I'm the youngest in the family, and of course, everybody knows youngest are always the favorite. And so, so Charlie used to take me around in he'd had a paper route. One of his early businesses was doing a paper route for a couple of blocks near where we lived. But he had a huge basket on the front of his bike, and he would take me everywhere. And I'm just a little kid. And I don't know, probably wasn't even 5 years old. And so one day he stops and he wants to see his friends in this tree house. And then he falls from it and he breaks his leg. And I couldn't get out of this thing, and I'm trapped. Anyway, I was his pet. So that's my stories, but I wanted to read you a story from one of his good friends growing up, Louise Gardam. And I hope I can make it through this. But this is kind of neat because this is a part of, you can hear a little bit from us about lifetime stories, but this is from one of his dear classmates. So a friend and classmate I have known for 6.5 decades has sloughed off his mortal coil. The other realm has been brightened and amused as he wakes up there. But a light has blinked out in this one. I want to share a few of the reasons that I loved his spirit so much. I love Charlie's laugh. It sort of draws you in. We are all bozos on this bus, as her husband used to say. And somehow when Charlie laughs, that is just fine and actually quite enjoyable. I will always think of him laughing. Charlie, like all of my favorite friends, was somebody you could just pick you up. If it had been a month or 5 or 10 years, we were connected, and time and space did not shake that connection. He was there in kindergarten and right up through high school. He was there in Bernathen in high school. He was sometimes in Glenview when I was, and sometimes he wasn't. First year in college, I brought home an older friend at Christmas. Charlie dropped by. When he left, she turned to me. She said, "Who is this fellow that makes you light up like a Christmas tree?" I was startled, but yes, seeing Charlie was always a source of fun and joy. Charlie connected with all generations. My mama had a soft spot in her heart for him. He made a lasting impression on all my daughters when they met him. That was Linden Hills one summer. He persuaded me to go for a bike ride with him. First time I'd been on a bike since childhood. It was a hoot, and I ended up doing summer bike trips with my siblings years later. I loved how Charlie called it like he saw it. He was fearless, even if his views were weird or unpopular. He earnestly believed in the 911 conspiracy. And he wanted to make sure that we had all the facts. He spent years doing numerology. Kind of ironic because I helped him with his math in 6th grade. But he believed in order, and numbers explained things in a way that worked for him. He was very concerned when I got vaccinated, and I came to think that he was on the mark about that one. The year that we had our 30th, when only Sylvia and I were still having babies, I ran into Charlie, the 30th reunion, but that is, walked into Charlie in the diner. I had baby Dan in my arms, and we walked in together, as if we got together twice a week instead of once a decade. Charlie loved his children and his grandchildren. He loved to talk about them. He loved his wife too, and I never heard him diss her as when they parted. He said, I guess I was pretty hard to live with. Charlie had a love of music. He told me that when he was the music coordinator at a small church they attended. I remember one year going back to Glenview in the summer and attending an outdoor concert with Charlie and his wife and a few others. Music, the language of affection, and Charlie was the man of feelings. He also had a very sharp memory. He could remember things from our childhood that as if they happened last week. He would recount conversations that we had in elementary school in detail, and was sometimes hurt that I had no trace of those memories. Charlie was a true environmentalist. How many people do you know that have conducted a landscaping business from their bicycle? I'm sure that those customers that had a visit from Chuck and Saw have not forgotten the quirky, chuckling tree man. Charlie was loyal to his classmates. He was in touch with Dinah as her earthly life wound down. He went and planted a tree from our class on her husband's property. And in more recent days, he was the one who flew from Arkansas and chose and planted our memorial tree for the classmates who had gone before us. While here, he found time to tease me about the way I shift gears in a brotherly fashion. He has a unique link with Joe. I think he knew that from Joe's marriage was ending before Joe did. When Richard passed, he made a point of calling me every 5 or 6 months to make sure I was okay. His last few months must have felt grim, stuck in a hospital bed hooked up to machines. That's no life for this buoyant spirit of our man, Charlie. And that brief interlude will now be forgotten. He'll climb higher and more magnificent trees, and heaven will rejoice with him. That was Louise.
Well, I thought we've talked about Charlie, but I thought I'd talk about Charlie as from his admiring younger brother, and about how John talked about being on the basket. But when I was, early 1950s, Charlie had a wagon. I was probably 4 years old, and he would pull me everywhere in it, and then when it got to be winter, he built some sides on it so we could go out in the winter. And, he would always include me, and I always felt like, how he, an older brother, they don't always do that, but he really included us. And he would take me down to the Dairy Queen, or he would take me, on his bicycle on the handlebars. Did you ever do that? I mean, how did I ever do that? It scares me to think about it now. And he would take us, we rode almost all the way up to Wisconsin sometimes on these old bikes that would usually break down. They're from the 1930s, these old bikes. They didn't even have brakes, you know, back then they had, so, and we'd have to patch them up and anyway, so he would include me and then when he would take me down to the village, we called it the village, and to the Dairy Queen and buy me a Dairy Queen. And he always seemed to have money because he always had work that he would do. He always had schemes like hunting golf balls, you know, when they got caught by the police, Bree, when they did that. But anyway, we would go around the park, the golf course, and the first person that saw the ball would say dibs and grab it. And occasionally I would be first, but I was at the end of the line. So then after you had you would go up and find the golfers and negotiate a price to get money. And so this is one of the ways that he would get money. He and Gil delivered newspapers, and they also had a job that paid just terribly at the news agency. And we would go there and work at the news agency and cut off the front page and get, you know, like, I don't know, I don't even remember, it was 25 cents an hour or something like that. Anyway, so he always had money, but he always included me, which was, you know, just a great older brother, and I really admired him growing up. And then, you know, there's so many stories. We've heard a lot of them already, but when he was in the Army, he was at Fort Dix when I was at school in Bernathen, and he would just show up. And Charlie, aren't you supposed to be in class or something? Are you AWOL? Yeah. Oh, they'll just give me an Article 15, whatever that was. I don't know, but anyway, so he didn't seem to be too worried. Appealing to, yeah, I suppose. Anyway, so he went to Germany, and I'm not sure, he let me use his Yamaha. He had a motorcycle. I got to use that. I don't know what happened to that, but anyway, maybe he took it back when he got back from Germany. But we also had his Volkswagen Bug, which was a different Volkswagen, and he trusted us to use it. And Joel and I used it to its fullness. I'm pretty well sure that we used it up. But he also used to, he protected me, you know, and he looked out for me. And, you know, everyone would say, are you Charlie's brother? Because he always made friends with people all around the village. And, you know, you'd be kind of proud, yeah, Charlie's my brother. And I was never quite as outgoing as him. So when I was with him, I felt pretty special. So anyway, one time there was a guy bullying me, and I talked to Charlie about it, and he punched him right in the nose. And he never bullied me again. And I was always kind of mad at Charlie because when I was kind of taking over for Woodstock, I didn't know I was. So, you know, he started out by selling jobs and showing me the jobs, and pretty soon I was just pretty well on my own. I would sell the jobs. I would, you know, the only thing he would do is, you know, he and Marla would do the payroll and things like that, but pretty more and more work on my shoulders. And I was, you know, what the heck? Well, I didn't know it, but I was being prepared to, you know, to take over a business. And so it worked out pretty well for me. So anyway, when we found out about Charlie, and then we, you know, came down to see him in August, I think it was late July or August, we came down to see him, and you remember it was kind of hard to try and find out what he wanted or what he was saying, and, you know, and to figure out the prognosis, what's going to happen. No one really knew. So, but I think toward the end, the last day that I saw him, he was kind of mouthing something, and I couldn't tell him. And then I said, "Oh, you're saying I love you, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I said, "I love you too."
Well, I didn't really come prepared. I'm Mimi. I am blessed to grow up with a lot of the Smith clan after Marla and Chuck. I'm Marla's sister. After Marla and Chuck got married, and I've always admired their family and how they raised the kids. And he would, like it's already been said, he's very, very proud of all of you guys. So early on, well, I remember each of their homes where you guys lived early on, so that was always fun. And then when Taryn was born, I got to hang out. I was sent to help out Marla. I was like 15 at the time, I think, maybe. And so I stayed at your place. I don't even know. It was just like in the middle of all these highways, and there's this little house tucked in there. Prairie View. Okay, there you go. And so you were late a few weeks, a couple weeks, I think. Anyway, I think I was there for 4 weeks, and I was really only there for 1 week of actually helping out after you were born. But Chuck is actually the one that taught me how to cook okra, because I thought I knew how to fry okra, because we were, Marla was doing most of the cooking and stuff while I was there. And then the few days that she was gone in the hospital, Chuck's like, well, because I was there to help out, do you know how to fry okra? So I'm thinking, yeah, fry okra, I can fry. And I was trying to do it without any of the breading or the egg or any of that kind of stuff. So he set me straight, or maybe, yeah. So he set me straight. So I've got my okra perfected since then. So it was fun. So I'm actually the first one, other than the immediate family, that actually I've seen that met Taryn as she came home into the world. And then, as you talked about your house out in the country, and so I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky at that time. I was in the Army for 3 years, which is where Russ and I met. But it was a little bit closer, like an hour or so closer, to come visit you, and if I got like a long weekend, rather than going up to Illinois. And because I enjoyed your family so much, I drove there, whether, I don't know if I was invited or not, I just like, okay, here I am. And so as he was preparing, I was always, another able body to help out with things. So I remember spraying for seed ticks, getting all that stuff ready for your garden area, and helping put the fencing around where the garden was going to be and everything. Chuck, I kind of knew how to canoe. I had canoed before then, but he took me out canoeing, and I was not a very good partner. We got the canoe wedged, in the spring river there. But he took it all in stride. I never felt berated or anything. It was just like, okay, now we get to help. Well, I think we had to get help getting it out, but we did get it out. He says, oh, do you know how to ride a motorcycle? I'm like, well, I've ridden a mini bike. So he gave me this quick primer. This is at the Flathead House. He gave me this quick primer on how to ride this motorcycle. And I take off on it, and it's just like, whoa, and I'm just like, I almost hit. Thankfully, I went across the road and up over the road into this ditch. It fell over, and Darcy's in the window looking, Mimi died, Mimi died. So I was skinned up. Do you remember that? No, you were little, yeah. So I was skinned up a little bit, but totally fine. But I think that was my one and only motorcycle riding. Well, no, I did get back on it and just like stayed in the yard and just like really, really slow. But yeah. So, but no, it never gave me a love for motorcycles, and we've never had motorcycles. But I always also admired. Even before that, way back at probably at the time when Taryn was young, or when, I don't know, it doesn't matter if you guys had babies along, you'd always go out and like camping trips and things like that, but got to go out to the sand dunes of Michigan with you guys, and it's the first time I'd actually been like jumping down, he's looked like jumping from the height of like the top of a house, here, jump down in the sand dunes, it doesn't hurt. Just like, okay, so I did, and yeah, it's kind of fun, but I don't know that I've ever been I wouldn't have probably done that otherwise if it hadn't been for Chuck. But I like I said, I really admired how he raised all of you guys, and he is so proud of you. But I just picture you guys all tromping around in the hills of Arkansas, always taking shortcuts, no matter how little. Those 2-year-olds are just like going up the side of the hill, you know, just climbing. You guys can do it. And look at you, you always did. So, but I really am blessed to be kind of in that circle of the Smith clan. So thanks. Yeah, thanks.
I wasn't planning to come up here, but Kata just pushed me. Is that why you want? Every time I would sit down and think of memories, it's just, they're so beautiful and it's hard, you know. So, I've been crying since I got here and looked at that picture of the dad Santa, because he loved Christmas. And one memory that keeps coming up is when we went to visit Fawn when she worked at King Mountain Ranch. And it was a road trip with Dad and me and Bree. And Bree, I don't know how old you were, like 7 or 8? You were pretty little. I think I was 16 because I had just gotten my driver's permit. I didn't have my actual license, but Dad trusted me enough to just let me take the wheel, and we'd be flying down through Kansas, and he'd be like, "You can go as fast as you want as long as you're in a Rat Pack." So, yes, sir. So then you don't get pulled over, and I still use that wisdom. You know, they can't pull everybody over if you're going 90. So he would just go to sleep, and I would drive 90, not really knowing what I was doing. We made it to King Mountain Ranch. Fawn hooked us up. We had an awesome room, and we stayed there for a while. I don't know, got some good hikes in. But there was a lot. That was a pretty good road trip. We made Utah. We went to Mesa Verde. But I just remember that was a good trip with Dad. It felt like a good adventure. And I think I even remember him being like, you know, we probably won't get another trip, you know, exactly like this. And just, he was really good about being like, we need to remember that, you know, and he took a lot of pictures and made sure we did a lot of the typical awesome places. I don't even know where else we went. But we didn't really stay at hotels, did we? We took showers at a rest stop with all the truckers. We slept at some rest stops, yeah, just in the car. And he'd be like, "I need an actual shower. You don't know how it gets," or something. I'm like, "Yeah, I know how it gets. I need a shower too." We went camping at Black Canyon. That was a good memory. I remember him trying to set up this ancient tent and just getting real frustrated with the poles. And I just remember looking up at the stars, and just, it was beautiful, like just so dark out there, and you could just see all the stars, and just that really stood out to me. We drove down to the bottom of the canyon. I think we hiked a very short distance and then turned around. We were like, no, we're not walking all the way down that. Yeah, I drove around, going back to the driving. Dad was asleep at one point, and we're going through all these mountain passes. You know, I'm just like, I feel so great, just driving, woo. And then I go around a corner, and like, instead of hitting the brake, I hit the gas. And just was like, and there's just like sheer cliffs. And Dad like, woke up. And he just laughed it off. I was like, sorry, Dad. But just the fact that he had confidence in us. He had confidence we went and saw off our arms with chainsaws. I almost bucked back one time and he yelled at me for that one, but you get it in the thing and you pull it back, you know. So we're all alive. We have all of our limbs.
Dad lost a finger.
Dad did lose a finger, but we made it somehow, probably because of Mom. But yeah, he loved his grandkids. Lindley would call him his favorite grandpa. Don't tell the other one. But, he had a lot of fun with them. Lindley says her last memory with him that she really remembers was falling asleep on his lap. So, anyway, love you, Dad.
Kleenex got to work out. Oh,
couple.
Jean.
We have, can you hear me? So there are about 20 people that have joined us on Zoom for the whole service and have stuck with it. And a couple of them wanted to share, and so I'll read these.
Okay.
From Joe Seckelman, also known as Jody, said, I knew Charlie as Chuck. Chuck was raised, as was I, in the Swedenborgian faith. Thank you. And we attended a private religious school in Glenview, Illinois. Our class had 10 kids, 3 boys and 7 girls. The other boy, Elvin, moved to Detroit when we were in 3rd grade, so Chuck and I were the only boys in the class. As youngsters, we did mischievous things young boys would do. We worked as tree trimmers when we were 16 at Archibald Enoch Price, the care of trees for the summer in 66. At the end of the summer, we both attended the Academy of the New Church in Bernathen, thank you, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Philadelphia. We were roommates and dating sisters. I was in Chuck's wedding, and I missed Chuck. After he married and moved to Arkansas, we didn't see each other much. When he was in the Army in Germany, I went to visit him. I purchased a car there with my girlfriend while there and gave it to Chuck when I returned to the U.S. Chuck became a very popular guy at the Army base because he had his own car. And one other person, Jim Swalm, AKA Swami, in high school. He said, I have known Charlie, whom I have called Chucker. I live and always have in that large country to the north. So in high school, with draconian discipline, Chuck and I shared the feelings of outsiders, even though we came from different places. However, we got past a rather adversarial relationship quickly by senior year. We have shared a brotherly love as men for over 50 years, a joy to see so many familiar faces from the Smith family in our class. Seeing the last photo like an El Greco painting was both sad and joyful because those eyes were looking forward. As Louise said, he's spreading his unique brand of goodness to all our friends who went before him. Love and light forever, Chucker. We love you.
Yay!
One more. Someone just added. Tim Rogers said, met Charlie through Facebook. While looking for land in Arkansas, we ended up becoming really good friends and sharing long conversations about numerology.
I've really been touched by all the stories I've heard about Charlie, and I've known Fawn for many years now, and I can see what love that you all have for each other and for Charlie as a brother and co-parent and kids and grandkids, and I can see the family resemblance. I like meeting my friends' families. So this song sounds like they wrote it for him. So this is a Bob Dylan song and also Old Crow Medicine Show, and I kind of morphed the verses from each songwriter, and then hopefully we'll sing the chorus together. Headed down south to the land of the pines. I'm thumbing my way into North Carolina, staring up the road and pray to God I see headlights, flashlights. Look now, Papa, since you said goodbye, seems I've been thinking and I'm wondering why. Looking at the moon, I know it's alright, but I still cry. Here we go. Rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. Mighty running water of the Rio Grande, stars lie dotted on the promised land. It's all well talking and understanding rolling. When I'm looking on the road tonight, the moon is shining on a cold dark night. Oh, that feeling I know. Rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. Let's do it again. Rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. So rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel. Hey, mama, rock me. Rock me, mama, like the wind and the rain. Rock me, mama, like a southbound train. Hey, mama, rock me. Hey, mama, rock me. Hey, Papa, rock me. Hey, mama, rock me.
And the show goes on. So this is what I like to call the group therapy portion of the memorial service. My girlfriend Laura, my lovely assistant, is passing around pieces of paper. These are pieces of special paper, flash paper, but don't be alarmed. Everything's gonna be fine. They won't like catch on fire if you write on them. But these are for you to write anything that you feel you want to send in a message to Dad. If you, of course, you'll have to make it short because they're little, but anything left unsaid, basically. Get it out of here and onto the paper, and when you're ready, just kind of fold them up and put them in the bowl of sand, and then you'll get a big surprise. So yeah, and we'll give you just a couple of minutes. Oh, thanks, Renee. Little Enya or whatever you want to play, so, yeah. And now, if you'll read with me the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Drum circle. I kind of need a bathroom break.
Okay, this might be out of the box for many of you, but trust me, it's fun. And if Charlie was here, he'd say, hey, it'll be fun, right? So there are some extra drums and some shakers and tambourines, and we're just, we'll keep a beat and don't worry about it too much. We're really just gonna count to 4. If you can count to 4, you can keep a beat. And there's also shakers, some tiny bongos. Yeah, big drums. Big drums are fun. Don't be scared of the big drums. Is this a sister? That's Darcy? It's just a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 1, 2. If you got a shaker, shake it, 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 shaky, 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 shake. Take a double time. Here we go. And 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you would, on your way out, just make your percussion instruments come back over this direction. Thank you.
Can you note which shaker she is, and then
Bye.